Zero. I've got quite a lot to say about the last few videos that you made, but I can't obviously go into loads of detail because I feel it'll take the debate back, like, I don't know, a month or something. I will say one thing, however. When I discuss, I think my what grounds what video, that kind of objection still stands. Now, metaphysics is obviously the job of discussing which ontological posits are fundamental and which are reducible to the fundamental. So I reckon one of the best ontologies that we can have, or certainly the one I'm advocating at least at the moment, is that there are only universals and the relations that those universals bear to each other, and that is sufficient to give us the material particulars, yada 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 yada. I thought you were committed to the fundamental and irreducible existence of perceptions, but it seems that you too want to reduce perceptions to relations that things bear. So I want to know what's the fundamentally real ontological irreducible posits in your ontology. Now, you can't simply say relations, because relations have to be relations of things. So I want to know what those things are. What are you committed to the irreducible existence of? So, that out of the way, that aside, let's talk about epistemology, because you've been talking about it for a while. Now, I want to say a few things before we begin. Being skeptical is a virtue. It's a virtue both in philosophy and in the sciences, but a type of radical skepticism of the kind that you're advocating, I think, is a corrosive force within philosophy. I think it's self-refuting. Can we be skeptical about skepticism? That kind of malarkey. And I think it just demonstrates that we've not done our jobs properly as philosophers. If I don't know anything, if I'm not licensed to know anything, then philosophy is doomed. So how do we overcome this doom? Well, as far as I'm aware, the dialectical situation works something like this. I don't need to convince the skeptic from a realist position. I don't need to convince the skeptic that there is an external world or anything like that. All I need to do is resist his arguments. If you're dead set on your skepticism about the external world, there's not really a lot I can do to convince you otherwise. But that's irrelevant. I just need to resist your arguments against my position. So my lecturer kind of said it was a little bit like this. So we're shopping in the shop at the supermarket of metaphysics and epistemology. We're going around and there's an ad campaign and a big thing for radical skepticism about the external world. Now, whether we buy that product or not depends on our epistemological commitments, our metaphysical commitments, our other beliefs, etc., etc. Now, you're a subjectivist about experience. You think that it's solely subjective. Therefore, you'll be very much more inclined to buy this product of skepticism about the external world. However, given my epistemological commitments, my metaphysical commitments, I'm not going to buy it. It doesn't appeal to me. And, the appeal of this radical skepticism is somewhat dissipated. So I think that's where the dialectic position kind of is. So, how do we go about this? Two different ways I think that we can go about this. Now, the subjectivist says, and the naive realist may be inclined to agree, that conscious experience exhausts all of our epistemic justification and is the sole, is the necessary and sufficient condition for knowledge is conscious experience. The naive realist could agree and say, look, that's true, but conscious experience works in a different way. When we have a perception, it's a relation that we bear to this mind-independent reality, and therefore we know that we're not a brain in a vat because we are bearing a relation to an external world. So he can say that and he can resist your argument. Another way that he can do it is disagree. He can say, no, look, conscious experience is not sufficient to determine knowledge alone. That is, our beliefs derived from conscious experience are simply underdetermined to constitute knowledge. This waters down empiricism a little bit. It has to be said. But empiricism isn't the be-all and end-all by any means. So I can say, look, my justification, my epistemic justification, goes beyond conscious experience, or certainly conscious experience thus construed. You can say, look, right, we can have an inference to the best explanation, and that justifies my beliefs. You can say, look, looks like I have a hand, inference to the best explanation, I have a hand. That would seem, I think there's a lot of merit in that view. So, looks like there's an external world, ergo, inference to the best explanation, there's an external world. I think that certainly overcomes some of the problems that you've mentioned. I think it's more theoretically virtuous, more theoretically parsimonious, etc., etc. I simply think a better explanation is that there's an external world. Of course, this will go into questions of what constitutes theoretical virtue, etc., etc. And this video isn't long enough to do that. I could also be a complete externalist about epistemic justification and say, look, conscious experience doesn't do any of my epistemological footwork. I could say conscious experience is making reliable beliefs that are justified and true. So the blindsighter who has no visual conscious experience of certain phenomena, does the blindsighter have knowledge? According to an internalist view, where conscious experience exhausts all of the epistemological sort of justification, no, he can't possibly, because he doesn't have conscious experience about certain things. But the enthusiastic blindsighter, according to an externalist kind of view, who doesn't have conscious experience, but nonetheless can make reliable and informed beliefs that are justified, he can attain knowledge, according to certain externalist kind of views. So, he doesn't have any conscious experience of anything, he can still have knowledge. That is one way to go. So, there are a variety of arguments out of the skeptical position which I'm advocating. One is, we consider conscious experience as working in a different way. Another is inference to the best explanation, there is an external world. Another is we simply do away with conscious experience altogether and say that if someone can have justified beliefs that are true without conscious experience, he still has knowledge. There are a whole variety of issues that are similar to this and relating to this that get us out of the skeptical conclusion. Because, again, as I'm saying, if you're dead set in believing that we might be a brain in a vat and we have no knowledge over it, I can't convince you otherwise. I simply can't, but I don't have to. So in summary, I want to know what your ontological posits are and generally an answer to this video. But in conclusion, please, for the love of God, don't even compare me to Ayn Rand again. Not even if it's a simple analogy. Please no. Please no.